So I am probably 3/4 of the way through Spare. I think I said in the previous video I've reached the point of when Harry and Meghan are about to become more exposed, and I've now reached the point where he's just about to ask his mother, his grandmother, for permission to marry. And what is striking me most is that this man appeared to me to be cut adrift at 12 when he lost the most stable of his parents, in the most traumatic circumstances. The person that had given him the most physical comfort and love and care, and was just sort of left cut adrift after that. And it seems that he was an anxious child anyway, and so the subsequent events of not really getting cared for during this awful time, having to walk behind the coffin amongst thousands of people who, I think, even though she wasn't their mother, thousands of people who did manage to do their grief and mourning, whereas he just got stuck, unable to do any grieving and mourning, and not helped or encouraged to do that by anybody with any sense of how you do it. And his father is pretty pathetic, and he had a shit childhood as well. So he's being parented by a pathetic father, and doesn't really get decent parenting, and grows up with this potentially PTSD that becomes enhanced by subsequent events, triggered by the paparazzi, triggered by the sound of a camera and the flashes. It's awful, absolutely awful. And then, as many victims with PTSD do as they get older, people with mental health troubles, with people with anxiety, begin to self-medicate using drugs and alcohol. So he and lads use drugs and alcohol. There's nothing new about that. There's nothing different about that. And when the chips are down, and when he is having to fight or wanting to fight newspapers and paparazzi and the tabloid press, nobody will do anything. There's just a complete shutdown from the people that should be supporting him, and there's this whole ritual and protocol that they all stand behind, and it's just atrocious. It's awful. There's been a couple of times in my life when I have felt absolutely impotent in the face of something, and it's a horrible feeling. And I get the feeling, that's the cat knocking things over on the table, I get the feeling that he is left feeling impotent so many times. And his father saying to him, "Oh, don't look, darling boy," and I'm thinking, what does that mean? Does that mean if you don't look, it's not happening? What a wanker. Of course it's happening. So meanwhile, the women in that family, often the women, not all of them, Camilla probably, not to the same degree that Diana was pursued, or the degree that Meghan was pursued, and I don't think Kate was pursued quite in the same way, but the women get pursued, and the pathetic Charles says, "Oh, don't look, dear boy, darling boy." So I'm not surprised that eventually Harry, and I haven't obviously reached the part where he does decide enough's enough, I've got to leave, but I've read enough to think, fucking hell, enough's enough, it's time to leave. To be pursued wherever you go, for people to just treat you Like, I think there was this the bit where Megan's in a food shop buying food, and she's got a baseball cap on. She's, you know, trying to cover up who she is, trying to do some shopping, and gets stopped by somebody asking for a selfie, and she's really polite, but says, well, you know, I'm shopping now, I'm not working. And he said, well, I can take a photo of you even if it's not with me in it. And he starts taking photos. Then other people recognise her and they start pointing their phones at her, and it's like, she's not human. And I just can't get over that sort of behaviour. It's people behaving like fucking cattle. It's disgusting. So I am still on Harry and Meghan's side. I think it's shit being in the royal family for all of them, not just Harry and Meghan, all of them. It's shit. It's an institution, and you're stuck behind all this protocol and ritual that is so outdated. And I don't expect the pathetic king to do anything about that, because it's don't look, darling boy. So he's not looking. He's, you know, it's like my mum used to talk when I had young babies, and you've got a crying baby that you're trying to soothe and trying to get to sleep or whatever. And she said, well, we used to put you up the garden for you to cry yourself to sleep. I think, oh yeah, that's a good plan, because if you put us up the garden, you don't know we're crying. Fuck off. And it's the same thing. Just because he's not looking doesn't mean it's not happening. But is that what your King Charles is doing? Not looking? If it's not looking, then if I'm not looking, it's not happening. What a fucking waste of space. So that's where I am on Harry and Meghan. I don't imagine the next remainder of the book, which is about a quarter of it, is going to change my stance. And judging by what happened yesterday with the fake photo and everybody, or many people going, oh, rah, 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 you know, not really looking deeply and thinking hard, easily taken in by what they're given, what they're fed, I don't think that's going to change. I don't think the people are going to change, because they've been fed for years and years and years absolute bollocks about him. And people believe it, and people choose to believe it. And I feel sad that we live in a world where people choose to believe such utter shite. And that's all I'm going to say for now.